Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to Ask NK. Today we have some interesting news coming from Blender Foundation, and we have some cool features that you guys would want to play with coming to Blender 2.9. So with this said, let's get right into it. And first of all, we're going to start by talking about the meeting notes and the meeting that happened today, 2nd of June 2020. So the first announcement that happened was the announcement from the Blender Animation Studio talking about the open movie Coffee Run. And just in case you haven't seen that movie, you should actually see it because it's an awesome movie, lovely storyline. Some very cool stuff was done within that movie, and I think for the most part I am particularly impressed about the whole transition and how the story kind of plays within the movie. Next up was 2.83. 2.83 presently has one showstopper within the UI. The showstopper is a UI warning contrast that has actually grown, to become some sort of gray-like stuff compared to what we had in 2.82, and this in itself is supposed to be addressed today before the launch, which would take place tomorrow. And speaking about the launch, I would like you guys to actually stick around because tomorrow I'll be talking about 10 things that you need to try out when you're working with Blender 2.83. So the launch is for tomorrow, 3rd of June, and the other two showstoppers is for both the EV, and another one is the crash that happens when you start up Blender 2.82 while using an Intel graphic card when you're working with Windows. These ones are pushed back as they will be addressed for Blender 2.9. Next up is the announcement and talk about Blender 2.9, which is for all the models, the task, and also the whole roadmap for 2.9. These are things that was also discussed as they will be talked about, and some of the things have been scheduled for June 11th, which is definitely next week. Next up is the Google Summer of Code. So we've talked about Google Summer of Code, and we talked about this last week why I said, the Google Summer of Code is going to start up this week, and it is cool to see that they have actually started off coding this week. The coding actually started this week, which is, the official time. And in case you have no idea what these guys are working on, I'm just going to put a link in the description. We've talked about all of these things. I'm putting a link in the description so you can go through and check them out. And pretty cool, you can see some of the stuff they're looking out, as some students have actually, shared a one-line pitch of certain things that they're working on. And Kate is working on the OBJ, STL, and also PLY importers and exporters in C++ for faster processing and less memory usage, while Falk is also working, together with Antonio on the grease pencil that allows the user to manipulate strokes using curves. And I think this is also some kind of feature plan of what Blender should be able to do. At the same time, Kalra is working on the regression tests for this week, which involves finishing the prototype that automatically generates blend objects for testing. So these are some very interesting stuff. At the same time, if you want to take more look about this, you can go over to this part and you can see them for yourself. There was also another agenda that was talked about today, which was Dalai proposing the simplification of the release cycle. And at this point, he's talking about merging, Beacon 4 and also Beacon 5. Now, in case you have no idea what this is, last time when we talked about Blender 2.83 release, we did say that there was a prepare release and there is also a final release, right? Now, the whole idea now is Dyla is saying that it would make a lot of sense that, they combine these things together, and that would actually leave the LTS to be the new Beacon 5. And in case you have no idea, I'm just going to pull this link as well. You can actually take a look from here and you can see that, the prepare release is a week, and then we now have the final release, which is 1 to 2 days. So this in itself, he's taking a look at, a way that they can merge these things together. And then the LTS, which is the long-term support, would be a Beacon 5 instead of having, Beacon 4, Beacon 5, and have the whole LTS thingy happening. I think this is going to be way more simplified, as it makes a lot of sense. Now, we are diving into the terrain of the things that brought a lot of you to this particular news, and this is the new features and changes happening to Blender 2.9. You can see that contrary to what we used to have like last week, there is no updates for 2.83, as the final updates for 2.83 was talked about last week. So this week we're looking at the new features and changes for 2.9. First up is modeling. We already talked about this modeling stuff. There is some bugs that was happening within that tool, and it's pretty cool to see that they fixed it. And the very first thing which we're looking at is this tool. Now, this tool itself is the interactive modeling tool which you can use to place primitives on your scene or onto your scene. So if I simply click here, I can simply click and drag and raise this up. So we talked about this one last week. So in case you've been following the channel, this isn't new, but something else is new. So last week, while we were talking about this, you may have noticed slightly, or maybe you didn't, but every single time you want to make a position or you want to draw this on a particular position, there was always the cursor jumping to that part. To a point, I felt it was a very cool feature because, you know, because you're about to draw this there, the cursor actually jumps there just to notify you that you're drawing within that part. But for some reason, I don't know if it's good or bad, but they've taken that out as this right now. Once you want to draw, you can simply draw. Another feature which I think, or another thing which I think they haven't actually updated to this feature is once I click, a subscriber actually brought this to my notice, the cone icon is not yet there. All right, so there is no cone icon right here, but of course this is still the cone, so I'm just going to draw that and you can see this for yourself. So you can make all the changes you want to make, and this is very interesting to see, that they went ahead to update this too. But then, you know, hopefully they're going to go ahead and update this. This is one. The next thing is the mesh edit performance for high resolution images, for high resolution models have been fixed. So in case you're working with high resolution models, maybe you do some heavy models in ZBrush, maybe you're doing some heavy models in Blender without modifiers, you can actually work even faster. The ruler snapping has also been fixed. There's also modifier for vertex group. Right now there's a normalized weight option, and also there is an invert group weight option when you're working with the modifiers that has to do with the vertex group mix and also the vertex group itself. Then we have another update to the curves. Now the curves itself, for me, I think I like this one because, you know, a lot of people would find this very interesting. So if I simply hold down Shift and tap A on the keyboard, I can go over to the curve, Bezier, and you can see we have a basic Bezier curve. Actually, let's do that in Blender 2.83 so that you guys can see the difference. I'm just going to lose this right now and we can add that. All right, so if I go over to Blender 2.83, which we are right now, and I simply tap on the keyboard, I can go over to the overlay, and you can notice we have this set to handle. At this point, we can select a certain part, all right, but still we get to see all of these other handles. But then if I switch back to Blender 2.9, I can simply go back and press tab on the keyboard, and I can switch from here, and you can see this is set to selected. So any, you know, node or any vertex I select, yeah, any of that stuff I select, any point I select. So I have this, and I can simply select this and see the node that is responsible and, you know, make changes by simply using the handles. So within this part as well, if I go ahead and make this selection, I can also go to the overlays and I can choose to see all. So in case you want to work the same way you're working with, you know, 2.83, you can still choose to do that. You can also go ahead to set the normals. If you don't want to see any of this selected, you can also choose to do that. And yeah, you can also choose to do that. And this would help a lot of people that are trying to make some sort of curves, and maybe you don't want to have so many things on your scene at the same time. This is also going to come in extremely handy. So with all of this said, there is now some very interesting updates to the Sculpt. Now the sculpting section has actually done a lot of things. All right, so Pablo has actually been working hard on this thing. There's just crazy updates coming out every week from this guy. So first things first, last week we talked about the cloth filter and I teased what he showed. All right, now it is very interesting to see that you can actually play with that yourself. So for this now, I just have this tiny grid right here, and with the grid, let's take a look at what it looks like with the wireframe. I would press Ctrl and 3 on the keyboard just to add that, and with this done, I'll go over here and just simply set this to simple, apply that, and then jump over to the sculpting section. Now by simply going over here, I would press M on the keyboard, and once I do that, I will be able to paint around a particular point. So I tested this last week, and it's very cool to see that you have this feature right now. So by playing with that, I can also come over here, and now you would notice the incredible power of Pablo. We have this new icon right here. So with the new icon that we have right here, I can now go over to this part called gravity, and if I simply click and drag, oh my goodness, you can see this for yourself. Right, physics directly in the sculpt room. I don't know how it gets better. I mean, this is just super awesome. It gets crazier, right? It gets crazier, but I don't know how it gets crazier for any app at all that you can actually drive physics directly here. So with this now, I can simply go ahead, with the tool and simply add a subdivision and apply that, and you can see how clean this is. Actually, in case you don't want to add subdivision, you can go ahead and select the mesh filter and switch these to smooth. And I told you guys last time that they've worked on the whole smooth thingy. You can simply select that and I can smooth the hell out of this. You can see this for yourself. This is pretty insane. So let's just back up a bit because we're doing a bit too much. And the next thing which I would like to show you guys is, what if you want to make something like I don't know, let's just make something crazy. So if I go ahead and also choose to make the same selection right here and paint on a certain part, and maybe paint on this part, and maybe paint in the middle, we can still choose. At this point, we've already tested out the gravity and I showed you guys what it is. And this same thing, if you push the mouse to the opposite direction, you have an anti-gravity happening. All right, so for architects, anyone trying to build some pretty cool stuff, here you go. This is a leak, so you can now have your design ideas here. All right, so you can choose to do that. Now, this is not the only thing that this brush actually does. You can still choose to inflate. So if you want to also, do the same sort of inflation you have here, but with a little bit of finesse, you can do that. You can also choose to expand stuff. So let's just get this gravity down. Actually, let's undo all of what we've done. So you can also choose to expand. If I want to expand this, I can simply do that. You can also choose to get this pinched in. So if you want to pinch this in, you can also get ahead with that. Now, the expand and the pinching works best with closed object. What I mean by that is, if I simply close this all the way up, let's simply leave the default cube where it is. Let's subdivide this bad boy a little bit, and I'm just going to simply set this to what it is, like that. So with this now, I'm going to jump back to the sculpting section. Let's drag this all the way up to this point. Let's mask certain parts. Let's lose this stuff. Good. All right, so if I simply go ahead and mask this part, let me simply mask the part like this. That looks good. Let's mask this down part as well. And in case you don't want to, use the simple mask to do that, of course, you can always use this to mask this. And I simply did not remember to tell you guys, you can also choose to use your face sets. So if you're into using face sets, you can simply use face sets to drive the cloth. All right. So Pablo also, teased that. And at any point you want to drive this, you can simply use the face set to get this going. And with that said, if I go through and select the cloth filter icon, you would notice that we have the cloth masks, we have the cloth damping, and then we have the strength. So you can choose any of these things to get to whatever thing that you want to do. So I would expand this, and by simply using the word expand, if we have face sets, we'll set the face sets here. If we don't, we just leave it as it is. Click and drag, and you can now notice that we're expanding this object really hard. I can also go through and switch this to smooth, and then I can simply choose to smooth this down. All right, so I can use this and smooth this really down. So if you're into sculpting clothes, you're into sculpting stuff, this would come in handy, as once you're done with that, you can also proceed to using the cloth brush to get some very cool details out of your model. So for anyone who wants to work with this tool right now, it is available, and it is pretty good to see that Pablo is working hard, and the guys from Blender Foundation are not keeping or giving anything to chance, as they're simply getting all of this beautiful stuff up and running for us to have fun playing with them. We're also going to take a look at another pretty cool feature that you can now work with directly in Blender. And the next thing which we want to talk about now is an update. It's more like an update. It's an update to the pose brush. So within the pose brush, Pablo has actually gone ahead to fix the face set IK mode. So now you can have access to the face set IK, and you can simply use this to pose your character anyhow you want. So we have this basic stick figure here, and you can choose to play with it. You can set this by different deformation types. You can, push this however you want. And if we go ahead and do a basic side-by-side comparison alongside with Blender 2.83, you would notice that the pose brush basically doesn't have as much features as we have here. So in case you want to scale, you want to rotate, you want to translate, you now have all of these features here, and you can choose if you want to work with the face set, or if you want to work with any of these other selected stuff here, as you can simply explore more things and do way more by using the IK brush. I think for most people that are into sculpting, this was going to be very useful for them, as this would help them pose their characters properly. And for anyone who is also working with silhouettes, this is also going to be extremely useful. At the same time, I think this is also going to be something that most people would use if they want to just simply show a pose that maybe a character should be in without damaging the entire model, as they just simply proceed working with this. for the most part, Blender has actually come a long way, and there is just so many things that is coming to 2.9 that a lot of people would never have thought about 2 years ago, about 1 year ago, that Blender will be capable of. And I'm very excited to see that we have that feature right here in Blender. The next update that you can see if you download Blender 2.9 right now is the updates to the cycle. So there is update to the cycle, there is update to the video, sequencer, there is update to the file browser. Actually, you can notice that. And then there are updates to the UI. So these are basic updates that has been happening, and I think these are very minor ones, and for the most part I'm very excited about the cloak brush, I'm excited about the pose brush, and it's pretty cool to see that even with Blender 2.83 trying to come out by tomorrow, there is a huge set of updates that is already flooding the timeline of Blender 2.9. And that is definitely going to be about it. Tell me what you think about this in the comment section. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss the next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.